something strange is happening in America. On paper, the economy looks unstoppable, growing faster than almost any other developed country. But beneath that surface, something is breaking. The cracks are spreading quietly through factories, farms, and banks, and if history is any guide, those fractures won't stay contained for long. Because when one part of the American economy falls, it pulls everything down with it. America's economy is standing on fragile ground. The national debt has crossed $37 trillion, trade tensions are rising, and a potential AI bubble is inflating faster than anyone expected. To the casual observer, that might sound contradictory. After all, GDP growth just hit over 3%, one of the best performances in the developed world. But those glossy numbers hide a darker reality. America doesn't have one economy, it has 50. Each state operates like a mini country with its own industries, challenges, and vulnerabilities. And when you look closer, the truth is startling. Only 16 states are actually growing, 13 are flatlining, and 22 are already shrinking. The cracks aren't everywhere yet, but they're spreading faster than most people realize. The real question isn't if America enters a recession, it's how deep it cuts and who collapses first. When Donald Trump rose to power, he promised to revive the American worker, to bring back the jobs that built the middle class. Factories, steel mills, and farms were supposed to rise again. But decades of economic drift couldn't be reversed with slogans and tariffs. Since the end of World War II, America's manufacturing base has been in steady decline. In the 1960s, manufacturing made up about 25% of GDP. By the 1990s, it had fallen to 15%, and today, it's just 10%. The same story holds for jobs. Only 8% of U.S. employment now comes from manufacturing. Globalization accelerated that fall. When trade barriers dropped, companies moved production overseas to countries like China and Vietnam, where labor was cheaper and supply chains were efficient. In return, the U.S. pivoted to high-tech and financial industries. And while that strategy boosted national wealth, it hollowed out entire regions like Michigan, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. Trump's answer was tariffs, taxing imports to make American goods more competitive. But that plan backfired. Data from Goldman Sachs shows that 91% of tariff costs are being paid by U.S. consumers and businesses. Instead of protecting industry, tariffs have raised the cost of raw materials, eroding the last advantages American manufacturers had. The results are brutal. Since Trump's trade policies began, the manufacturing belt has lost over 40,000 jobs. Iconic steel mills in Pittsburgh have shut down. Workers who once earned steady wages now drive delivery trucks or take temporary shifts hours away from home. At the same time, immigration restrictions have worsened the problem. Many industries, especially manufacturing and construction, relied heavily on immigrant labor. In some states, up to 25% of the workforce. With deportations rising and work visas falling, factories are running below capacity, projects are stalled, and farms can't find enough hands to harvest crops. One striking example came from Georgia, where hundreds of South Korean workers helping to set up a new high-end dye plant were detained by ICE. Across the country, similar stories repeat. Construction sites frozen mid-project, equipment collecting dust, and businesses losing millions. Ironically, the two pillars of Trump's economic strategy, tariffs and immigration crackdowns, have ended up hurting the very states that voted for them. But manufacturing isn't the only casualty. The damage has now spread to America's agricultural heartland. States like Iowa, Kansas, and South Dakota generate a quarter of their GDP from farming. Yet, over the past few years, prices for key crops like soybeans and corn have fallen by almost 50%. Part of the problem is competition. Countries like Brazil and Argentina have ramped up production with cheaper labor and looser regulations. But the bigger blow came from China's retaliation. In response to U.S. tariffs, Beijing hit back with tariffs of its own, up to 25% on American soybeans, corn, and pork. Practically overnight, some of America's biggest export markets disappeared. Billions of dollars in crops were left to rot. Farm bankruptcies surged 30% in Nebraska, while net farm incomes in Kansas and Iowa dropped by a quarter. Many family farms that survived generations of hardship have now shut down for good. Even those still operating face a massive labor crisis. Immigration crackdowns have led to the worst farm labor shortages in 2 decades, with vacancy rates exceeding 40% in some regions. And this isn't just an agricultural story, it's a financial one. Many farmers use futures contracts to lock in prices years in advance, giving them stability. But with fewer workers and rising costs, they can't deliver what they promised. Those contracts are collapsing, losing 20% of their total value since 2022, the steepest drop in over a decade. Margin calls, the payments farmers must make when their contracts lose value, are soaring. Thousands of farmers are now forced to pay cash they don't have, pushing them to the brink. Experts warn that by 2030, America could lose up to 100,000 farms. And when those farms fail, the damage doesn't stop there. Their debts flow upward to regional banks, credit unions, and insurers. These institutions have more than $450 billion tied up in agriculture loans. If defaults rise, small-town banks could collapse, spreading financial contagion across the system. Meanwhile, the service-based states that appear strong, like Texas, Illinois, and Massachusetts, are sitting on another ticking bomb: personal debt. Household debt-to-income ratios have climbed above 130%. For nearly a decade, low interest rates masked the problem, allowing people and governments to borrow endlessly. Now, with higher rates, repayment burdens are exploding. Families are cutting spending, businesses are closing, and delinquencies, from mortgages to credit cards, are rising sharply. Even the booming tech states, California, New York, Washington, owe much of their growth to the AI gold rush. But underneath that excitement lies massive leverage. Companies like Oracle are operating with debt-to-equity ratios over 500%, meaning for every dollar they have, they've borrowed 5 more. The system feels eerily familiar. Before 2008, the world thought housing was a safe investment until it wasn't. Now, America's new house of cards is being built on farm loans, factory closures, and AI startups fueled by borrowed money. And when those dominoes start falling, the next great American downturn won't come from where anyone expects.